Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the October 15th meeting of the Urban Village Development Commission. Welcome back. I wasn't here, so welcome back to me. First off, we'd like to take a look at the meeting minutes from October 1st. And did anybody have any comments, questions, or edits? Yes, Michael.
Yeah, I do. On page 2, near the bottom, it says Beard asked if there are any plants in the state's list that may be invasive in this climate zone but may not be invasive in the rest of the state. My intention was to kind of have that the opposite, so that we're not excluding plants here that may be invasive in other parts of the state but are not invasive here.
Did you catch that, Lucy? Okay, all right.
Thank you.
I didn't know if we were looking for an answer or anything. Okay.
Well, and I think the thing I can say is we're putting together a final edits memo, and we're mainly focused on county and local invasive plants, which should address your concern of not eliminating things or bringing in things from the east side that would be a problem.
Okay. Anything else? I had a couple of things since I wasn't here, and I'm relying on the meeting minutes. On page 1, Mr. Lee asked if the city sign code allowed neon lighting, and there's no answer on the minutes. So I'd like to know what, maybe have in the minutes what the answer was. Also, I don't understand, I think maybe there's a word or two missing in that Niven stated that parking was expanded to include motorcycle parking. He also mentioned that no additional parking spaces that will be provided. I don't know if maybe we're supposed to remove the word that. I'm not sure I understand.
Where are you?
Bottom of page 1.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Second paragraph from the bottom. Is the word that supposed to be in there? Is that what needs to be removed?
Yeah, that is the word
Okay,
that
I wasn't
needs
sure
to be removed.
I
Yeah.
understood the answer there. Also on page 2, middle, Beard stated that substantial remodels have a 25% trigger. I don't know if the answer was given on that, and I think
So the answer, there wasn't an answer because we needed to go do some
I see.
research.
Okay.
So it's included in the memo, but we didn't give an answer at that time.
Okay, thank you. And finally, on page 3, Niven discussed the expected timeline at the bottom of page 3. I think it'd be nice if the minutes stated what that timeline was, just for anybody who might be looking for an answer.
Okay, so it's November 18th is the expected approval at council. October, and now I'm going to kind of jump around. October 21st, it will open at the council, the hearing, because that's the way it was advertised, but it will open and then just remain open. I don't think they're taking testimony that night. Then on the 5th, we'll be back here. On, I think it's the 12th of November, it'll be at Land and Shore, and then returning to the full council on the 18th, as I said.
Okay. Thank you. That was it for me on that. Anybody else? Okay. We have a motion to accept the meeting minutes from October 1st.
I so moved to accept the meeting minutes from, oh, now you missed me.
October 1st?
October 1st, thank you.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and second. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Okay. Great, thank you. Let's move on. We're going to be talking about the site development permit for Discovery West. If you wouldn't mind, if somebody could talk to us about whether or not this is a quasi-judicial or we might have some disclosures
Yes,
here.
so this is a quasi-judicial hearing or meeting, which means that the commission is the decision maker, and therefore you need to not have conflict of interest or appearance of fairness questions. And what that means, when we get to the hearing next week, we'll go through this or next meeting, we'll go through this in a little more detail. If you have had any outside communications on this application, or if you have any connections to someone associated with this, you need to declare those and give people an opportunity to challenge you.
So at this time, I'll go ahead and ask if anybody has any conflict or appearance of fairness issues, questions. Nina. Okay.
said at the beginning of this year when I took on a job in Issaquah Highlands that I'd tell you the details of my involvement with any of the applications, and so I'll try to give you as many details as I can think and open up to any questions if you have any that I might not think about. I'm the communication manager for Highlands Council, which is the nonprofit organization in Issaquah Highlands tasked with building community there, created by the founder to stand outside of the homeowners association and to embrace the entire community and to serve it. It includes commercial and rental communities. One of my tasks is to edit and publish the newspaper, and that involves advertisers, just as background. And also as background, Phil Norrid, who is in the audience today and works with DevCo, is one of our trustees on the Board of Trustees. All of that description said, I haven't had any discussions about this application or this development with anybody, especially not with Phil. And I have no advertising clients from this company at this time at all. I serve the DevCo apartments that are existing by helping them get communication from our community about festivals and events in the newspaper. So that's the information I have for you, and I'll just leave it up for your consideration.
Okay. Any concerns from the commission or the audience? No? At this time? Okay, we'll reopen this. Thank you, Nina. We'll reopen this again during the next meeting, and everybody should be thinking about whether or not they have any disclosures to make at that time. Thank you.
Great.
Your show.
Good evening. My name is Mike Martin. I am an associate planner with the Development Services Department. I drafted the staff report that I think most or all of you have in front of you, and I'm just going to walk through the project today. DevCo's proposing Discovery West, which is the third installment of their residential multifamily in Issaquah Highlands. I'll just kind of walk you through the project. I'm happy to answer any questions along the way, and then DevCo will present following my presentation. So just to give you a 30,000-foot view, everyone here is going to be very familiar with the site. You see Swedish down there. This project is blocks 25 through 27, just north of Swedish. They're highlighted in red. You can see the existing Discovery Heights projects, phases 1 and 2. I've highlighted those in the kind of checkered red border. I'll walk through some of the highlights of the site, but this one here is just to kind of show you from an aerial perspective the project, kind of the scope, the size. This again is kind of the same thing. Just a summary, a little bit of a summary of the proposal. It's just over 5 acres with a dwelling or a density of 41 dwelling units per acre. Excuse me? Oh yeah, no, that's great. 209 units. A brunt of those will be located in 2 stack flat apartment buildings with 24 additional buildings located in carriage units on the east part of the site. And we'll have a look at that at the site plan here in a minute. The stacked flats max out at about 65 feet, and the carriage units are about 38 feet. This will be a traditional townscape neighborhood like the project in phase 1, most of it anyway. And there are some highlights of the site, trails through and around the site. There's a dog run, pet area, pea patches, gathering area in the middle. So now I went up there and took a bunch of photos, and I'm going to share about a dozen of them with you here, and just to give you a little bit more context on the site. And then up on the upper right, you can see kind of where the photo was taken and then the orientation of the photo. So number 1 is looking down 8th Avenue, and I put this one in there to kind of show the primary street that's going to provide service for the residents. And you can see Proliance in the background there. Number 2, down on the bottom left, starts to show a bit of the relief on the site. This site has a very level building pad, but it does drop off as you go east. And that's Discovery Drive there on the left. You can see it kind of follows grade down to Highlands Drive. The third photo, again, this is kind of showing the relief. Our building pad for this project is going to be up on the left. You can kind of see the
I
tip
think you
of,
mean up on the right.
oh, I'm sorry, on the right. You can see ProLiant Surgery Center up there, and then this project will be in front of that. This also shows the multi-purpose trail and the pedestrian bridge, which is a big part of the pedestrian connectivity for this site. Number 4, this one I put in there to kind of show how flat the site really is. It's kind of steep on the edges, at least on the east edge, but the building pad has been graded such that it's very flat. And also that one kind of looks north up into Grand Ridge Plaza. It's a bit blurry there. Number 5, this is an important one. That will be a shared driveway that provides access at the southern end of the site. That's also access to ProLiant Surgery to their parking lot in the back. 6, again, is looking north towards Regency. 7 kind of shows the bluff, so the buildings will come up pretty close to that edge, and then you see the multi-purpose trail down there, and then Highlands below. And then finally looking back in the corner of the site out toward ProLiant and Swedish. So I think that gives a pretty good perspective of the site and what we have. Quickly, I wanted to put these in here because the existing trails are a big part of this. So we have the first one looking from the east side of the Ped Bridge back up to the site. At the top of that hill on number 9 is where the buildings will be. Just for perspective, this is on the opposite side, looking toward the phase 1. The building pad for this will be about at the same level as the units there on the left. So the units on the other side of Highlands Drive with this project, the footing is going to be generally about at the same elevation. And then 11 and 12 again kind of show the Ped Trail. If you look at 11 and you were to come back from where the photo was taken, there will be a new staircase that provides access up to the Ped Trail that bisects the site, which we'll see in a moment. And then I thought it was interesting. I guess I was talking to Lucy today, but I threw these in here the day I was taking photos. We had a paraglider landing in the donut hole across the way. So knowing what we know so far, I've taken the site plan, which I'm going to show on the next page, but I kind of did just a rough overlay so we could get an idea of the building massing with kind of what's around it. The buildings here are white. They don't show up great, but I can kind of point it out. Actually, I'll use the mouse. This is the biggest building, Building A, Building F here, and then the carriage buildings, 4 of them along here. Internal parking, and I'll kind of talk about the vehicular and ped circulation here momentarily. A couple of amenities that are outlined that I just wanted to highlight. There is a ped area kind of at the north part of the site. There's also a gate for that from the Discovery sidewalk. Their kind of main open space area, I've coined it the central gathering area for lack of a better term, but we're going to regulate that as a vest pocket park, and that has some amenities, which I'll talk about in a little bit. They also propose some garden plots, and I also highlighted the kind of central waste area there at the south where primary pickup will be for waste. Excuse me. Taking a look at the pedestrian circulation here. The darker red is the existing sidewalks. So we have sidewalks up 8th and along Discovery. The black checkered boxes are the existing multi-purpose trails. And then kind of the hashed stuff is what will be regulated as neighborhood trails. Those will be 6 to 8 feet in width and have a 4-foot border on either side in most instances. This is the Ped Bridge that goes across Highlands, and then this little piece right here will be a new staircase that provides access up to this Ped Trail, which will be the frontage, the front entrance for buildings E, D, C, and B, which are the carriage units. Lastly, the triangles indicate where the primary front doors are. Vehicle circulation's very straightforward on this site. You can see the 3 areas here, and I'm actually going to go back a couple just to show it. On the site plan, the primary entrance will be kind of mid-block here. You'll come in and have options to go up onto this surface lot or down into this surface lot. And then the secondary access would be down here at the south at this driveway that I highlighted earlier that will be shared with Proliance. You can get into this little smaller lot or back into this one. Parking, the required parking on site is, per code, is 375 spaces. That assumes 2 spaces for anything with 2 or more bedrooms and 1.25 spaces for 1 bedrooms. The applicant is proposing a reduction in parking, so they're proposing 337 stalls out of 375. That's about a 10% reduction of the required parking. And we can certainly talk about that in a little bit if we need to. As far as bike parking, they're well over. They're proposing a bike barn, which has 32 or 33 stalls, as well as other dispersed bike racks throughout the site. So they're only required to have 31, it looks like, but I expect they'll be up into the neighborhood of about 50 there. Some of the site amenities and open spaces, starting at the left is the primary central gathering area. Features of that that they're showing now include a bocce court, amphitheater seating. It's going to have a turf field. There's some barbecues up there. Looks like a picnic shelter. Just to the south of that in that same image is the primary east-west trail that goes all the way through the site. And then these other 2, the middle one shows the garden plots and then the dog run up to the north. I recognize they don't show up well here, but hopefully you can see those better in your drawings.
Mike?
Yes.
Sorry, can you go back one? This open space on the left, I know it's on sheet L102, but where is that relative to the overall?
Sure. So it's identified here, central gathering area.
That one, okay, thank you.
So it's kind of right in the middle, and it goes right by the primary neighborhood trail there.
Okay. The one that leads to the stairs down?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
So those are a lot of the kind of the key features and highlights of the site. I'm going to go ahead and do as we do and read all some of the unique conditions that came up with a staff report.
I have a question.
Yes.
Is it tract QE that has a bit of discussion? Where is that located?
Tract QE, thank you. So tract QE is, it's not really delineated very clearly on this, but just for sake of discussion, it is most everything to the east of their buildings. So it kind of starts right in here, right here, and then all the way down to pretty much Highlands Drive. It's tract QE. Thanks, I should have identified that. Without further ado, I'll just run through these conditions and then we'll give Devco an opportunity to present. So we had a total of 50 conditions with this staff report, and it looks like we have maybe a dozen that aren't kind of your boilerplate, so I'll run through those quickly. And this starts on page 33. Starting with number 2, prior to submittal of, actually, I'm going to read 1, that should be on there, that got missed. To ensure that property lines do not bisect buildings, a lot consolidation or lot line adjustment must be completed prior to the issue of any permits that allow construction of structures. Number 2, prior to submittal of construction permits, building or utility other than grading, the applicant shall execute a sales agreement with the city to purchase the area containing any site elements, trails, dog run, pea patch, etc., which are located outside of the project boundary. If the city and applicant are unable to negotiate the sale of the property, an easement for the area's use may be considered. Number 4, prior to the first temporary certificate of occupancy, the relocatable trail easement shall be moved in accordance with the final placement of the east-west neighborhood trail. Number 12, the area between buildings A and F will be designed as an auto court which provides welcoming, pleasant, unified design accommodating the various pedestrian routes, parking, and entry to the project. Non-asphalt paving will be used, and which through color, texture, and design communicates the various uses and users. Parking lot landscape standards must be met within the auto court consistent with Appendix P. The auto court will be designed in a single plane, avoiding the use of curbs to emphasize the holistic nature of the space. (16) During review of the utility permit, the applicant shall work with the city and Eastside Fire and Rescue to determine if it is possible to reduce the width of entrance to parking lot D. If the actual width of the parking lot entrance cannot be reduced, the applicant shall utilize techniques to reduce the perceived width for private vehicles in order to slow traffic at this location. Sorry, I know this probably is a bit tedious, but we'll just get through it here.
Just want to make sure I know what parking lot D is.
Oh, do you want me to run back? We can take a look really quick. Sorry, that's not very clear, but parking lot D is this large one here.
Okay, the whole thing. Yeah.
So just to identify them, A is the little one coming in, B is this, C down here, D is this large one, and there's also under building parking under building A, which is identified as P1.
Yeah, I was going to say the concern of that one is that the whole thing is too wide as we're seeing it now.
So that condition that you just read, what are you reducing through that condition?
Sorry, let me jump back to the condition.
(16), I believe.
Oh, okay. So the area we're talking about here, and you can kind of see it here, is the throat of this parking lot entrance right here where the trail kind of stops. This will be continuous across the way, but that's, I think, about 30 plus feet in width, and we're just trying to get that narrowed down a little bit. We'll do so as much as we can and still allow fire to
Nice.
get in there if we need to.
So just the entrance, not the whole parking lot, right?
No, just the throat of that entrance there to D.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, on to number 20. Prior to the approval of the first building permit, a special report must be submitted which either shows that no additional loads are imposed on the walls or that the additional loading has been mitigated. 24, the southern driveway must be signed for right
Mike, sorry, that was awfully loud. What walls?
walls.
In 20, it says imposed on the walls. Which walls are you referring to?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I meant to
Ones
make
on
that
Highlands
condition a
Drive.
little bit more clear. It's the spar walls, the Sammamish Plateau Access Road, basically the walls that you see when you come up Highlands Drive. Dan can speak a little bit more to that, but those are the walls that we're talking about here.
I think the next one is 23. You were about to skip over it.
Oh, did I skip one?
You were almost
On the
you were
list.
about to
Oh, I'm
skip it.
sorry. 23, the pedestrian ramp on the northern driveway must be aligned with the adjacent walkway, and a receiving curb bulb and ramp must be constructed on the west side of 8th Avenue Northeast. The relationship of these two elements will be evaluated during the review of the utility permit.
Can we look at a map on that one real
Yep.
quick?
So here we're talking about the ped trail crosses here below parking lot A, and we're just making sure that there's a receiving ped facility on the opposite side.
Including a crosswalk or no?
It might be a crosswalk, it might not. I mean, if you have facilities on both sides, there's a crossing. I mean, it's just like, you don't have to stripe a crossing.
Yeah, okay, just
Yeah,
curious.
Yeah.
The covered 24, so on to 35. One additional loading, and this
Hold on.
needs to be,
We missed 24, I think. Did we not? I don't think we talked
Read
about
it
that.
out loud.
oh, okay. The southern, 24, the southern driveway must be signed for right-out only vehicular turning movements. Additionally, the configuration of the curb bulb will be reviewed with the utility permit to ensure that traffic and emergency turning movements function safely.
So that's the shared driveway,
Yes.
right? And currently it says exit only. Will that be changed completely? Is that configuration going to change? I believe there's a sign on that driveway that says exit only. Yep, yep, what?
The configuration would change so that you
Okay.
can enter in.
So it'll, right now, I think it's, is it one lane out? So it'll be configured to 2 lanes, one in, one out, and it's right turn only from there. Does it? Okay.
I think it's been a choice by ProLiance to make it exit only, and since it's only for their use, we don't have a concern about that, but that road actually straddles the property line and was always intended to be a shared two-way road.
Okay, thank you.
But it will be modified by the construction of this.
Okay, thanks.
So on to number 35, and there's a slight error which we will correct with the briefing response memo. There's some words that were omitted. I'm going to read it as it is and as it should be. As it reads now, one additional loading and potentially may be located along 8th Ave Northeast. Obviously, that doesn't make sense.
Keith, write that? Just kidding.
We're gonna modify it to read one additional loading space is required and potentially may be located along 8th Avenue Northeast. Okay. 37. Where pedestrians are in proximity to the exterior edges of the underbuilding parking in Building A, the applicant shall provide materials that are pedestrian friendly. This performance standard will be met through using materials that are visually and texturally interesting at a pedestrian scale. Long, unbroken use of single material will not meet this standard unless supplemented with architectural relief, artwork, and additional plant materials, etc. The decorative architectural screens and/or green screen trellises shall provide 50% coverage of each non-vehicular opening into the parking deck. 38, all buildings shall be located with no to minimal setback from the public sidewalk or regulated trails that serve as their primary entry. Where a minimal setback is provided, a low element such as a hedge or wall shall be provided to maintain the street wall per the traditional townscape guidelines. 5 more. 40, the retaining walls, currently just the ones on the east side of the site, must be designed in such a way to be visually interesting and a positive contribution to the pedestrian environment and off-site views to them, such as the wall material, adding landscape at the bottom of and/or climbing the wall, decorative handrails and fall protection. In addition, the character of the wall must be consistent with the traditional townscape neighborhood type, which would preclude the use of rockeries.
What is fall protection in this case?
Fall protection is maybe split rail fences or anything. If that wall gets above 30 inches and there's a walkway adjacent to it, we're going to require some type of fencing or something
Okay.
there. And that'll get picked up in the utility review.
Okay, thank you. It's only good in winter. Summer.
Okay, 43, it's a long one. A lighting plan shall be proposed which maintains lighting at the minimum necessary for safety and function and balances the goal of minimizing night glow and off-site lamp visibility with pedestrian scale lighting and the urban design potential of lighting and light fixtures. Cutoff fixtures will be used and lighting shall be located in areas where drivers and pedestrians are likely to be. The lighting plan shall comprehensively address buildings, streets, drives, open space, parking lot, trails, and landscape lighting so that lighting impacts are not compounded in portions of the site by overlapping illumination patterns. To facilitate review of the lighting, a photometric calculation stamped by a professional engineer showing illumination levels on the pavement shall be submitted with the permit for construction of lighting. A point-by-point calculation is required. The illumination calculation shall include all fixtures that contribute light to the site: poles, bollards, building-mounted lighting. Low wattage decorative fixtures such as sconces or porch lights can be excluded from the calculation. No uplighting is allowed. All exterior lighting is subject to the specific approval of the responsible official. And I think that one's pretty standard. In the future, I might consider not reading that one, but unless there was some special circumstance. "47, all trails shall be designed as neighborhood trails, where site restraints limit the ability to provide a full landscape border. Example, the South Trail. Additional landscaping or architectural treatment must be provided in order to clearly define trail boundaries. This includes adding at least three trees adjacent to the driveways and adding an additional landscape area and/or architectural treatments to the north of the primary waste collection area."
There's an extra word in there, I think.
Yeah, I got it crossed out right here.
Yeah.
48, in order to assist bicyclists, a bike rail shall be provided with the staircase located within track QE. And this will be so that it's consistent with the staircase on the opposite side of the bridge, rather. It has a bike rail as well.
And Mike, don't read 50.
I know, I was not going to read 50. And 50 talks about garbage and a lot of the little nuances that get picked up in the utility permit review. I can just highlight it quickly. As I showed you before, there's a primary waste collection area at the southeast part of the site, and then there'll be collection bins within each building, and then 2 additional ones for the 2 carriage buildings, and those get moved with an on-site golf cart or John Deere tractor or something to the primary waste area. If you have further interest, you can read number 50, but I will spare you for now.
I do have one question on the point number 9 there. Cleanscapes is a company.
Cleanscapes is the city's waste purveyor. So-
Right, but it's a brand, right? And I guess all I'm saying is it, and maybe it's the city's, but it's still a brand, right? So if it was Robanco or somebody else that was doing it this time, I'm just wondering if it's wise to actually put the name in there as opposed to saying, more of a generic term.
I think we have used the city's waste purveyor.
Yeah, I mean, not that it's not that big a deal. I just don't know.
No, I understand.
We're not using those specific terms elsewhere, so I think it'd be good to be consistent.
I'm comfortable changing that if that's what you want, no problem.
And the other thing I'd say about these conditions, even though I'm sure all of you want to hear every one of them read, I just want to point out, and correct me if I'm wrong, Lucy or Mike, the standard conditions, if there are any concerns with any of those, you should make sure you're reading through those as well and bringing up any concerns. We can talk about them if something needs to change or be amended or whatever. They're not out of bounds, is what I'm trying to say. So, right?
And we'll have time to listen to your concerns tonight, and if you haven't had a chance to read through all of them and you do and something comes up, just email me and we'll make sure that we respond to it in our briefing response memo. That concludes my presentation. I'd like to welcome Marique with GGLO, and she'll be speaking on behalf of DevCo.
Thank you, Mike. Well, if you guys don't mind, we'll hold our questions till after the applicant presents. Yes? Thanks. By the way, if there's anybody in the audience that would like to speak during public comment, we'll have that opportunity as well after we have some discussion. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Marique Lacasse. I work at GGLO. I'm a landscape architect. I'll bring it closer. I just want to introduce the client team tonight. We have Jack Hunden and Tom Neubauer from DevCo. We also have James Bradley, which is the principal in charge for GGLO, and Amy Hartwell is the project architect, and I'm the PM and actual project landscape architect. So We had not coordinated on our presentation, and I have a lot of slides that are the same, so we'll go fast on those.
Mind if I bring the lights down again?
No, go for it.
Yeah, I thought that.
So I wanted to start with saying that DEVCO's been in Issaquah Highlands for a few years now, and we've been working with them on the Phase 1 project. So here's a really kind of cluster of really great shots that are from the Phase 1 project. And here, not as good because the photographer isn't quite there yet, but Phase 2, the first building, this got occupancy in early summer, and we just got occupancy, I think, for this last building, which is on Discovery, and it's not sunny. So talking about the site, we really wanted our project to fit within the natural context. It's on the outer boundaries of the Highlands, so we really want to make the transition between the natural environment and the Highlands. It needs to create universal appeal. We want it to be unique to Issaquah Islands, and again, kind of build on our previous successes. The community, these are important points to make. It's a close-knit community, as most of you already know, but hear me out here. We've got proximity to retail, entertainment, office, school, hospitals. We have quick access to the park and ride and transit. We have a really strong and well-developed trail system that has a huge focus on pedestrians. We're close to work hubs with Swedish and now kind of all the retail that's starting up. Issaquah Highlands is a sustainability commitment, and the flat is so just talking about, talking about the site opportunities themselves, we've got a flat site that has amazing views all around, kind of these beautiful neighborhood or territorial views of mountains around. So here's a few shots of what's really kind of in our closest proximity. Swedish, Proliance, mountains to the east and south. So we're in traditional townscape, and this picture is, you know, in Vancouver or something, but it's the character that we want to bring to 8th Avenue, where we'll have residential entries, we'll have individual entries, we'll have low walls, and kind of this very formal feel. So I'll go fast on these. Phase 1, Phase 2, our phase. We've talked about that, but really briefly, 209 units, about 11,000 square feet of interior amenity space that has indoor pool, fitness, lounge, and play areas. 340 parking stalls. We've found one more. 36 bike stalls, that's in the bike barn, and then we do have a few more bike amenities that are sprinkled throughout the site, and 12,000 square feet of outdoor space that includes open lawn, outdoor fireplace, terraces, and community gardens, and the pet area. So so I've turned the north, so for everybody's, the north is that way. The larger building with the parking garage, the entry court, building F with most of the amenities, the interior amenities are in building F, and then buildings B through C are the smaller carriage units with parking garage below. We've, let's see, we've got our main entries and circulation within the site. We'll go fast. I have a moving section here that basically is going through the site north-south, looking west. So we've got the south, the building F, sorry, it's going fast, but that Auto Court Plaza, and then we're really kind of bringing the grade down to get to our parking garage, which is below here. So we're massaging the site really in that, in this portion of the parking garage, or the parking lot to get to that lower portion. So, next. Then I wanted to talk about the trails and the trail system. So the main trails are in purple, kind of smaller scale trails are in blue, and they, as you can see, they kind of sprinkle the site and tighten it, everything. We wanted to make sure that we were creating the connections to the north, and entertainment, to Swedish, to the rest of the trail system that's going kind of towards I-90, and then internally as well. We are creating rain gardens within the parking lots, so these inner islands will collect water and be kind of stormwater feature and sustainability education for the residents. So here's another section starting at Islands Drive. These two are the two existing trails that are there. We're building a stair, and this is going through the main central area where we'd have a lawn, amphitheater seating, a bike barn, carriage homes, and then the rest is pretty flat, and this is the northern elevation of Building F, where the amenities are. So that kind of space is all together. So location really quickly, pet area, open lawn and gathering area. We've got terraces that are adjacent to the amenity spaces, and community gardens on that edge. I have really quick enlargements. So here's the pet area. They're really, I mean, they need designing, but they need approval first. Here's the trail and the main open lawn. We've got bocce court. We've got picnic and barbecues, amphitheater seating along this edge. The bike barn is in this location, really at the intersection of the main trail and kind of this other trail that's north-south along the carriage homes. And we've got these little terraces that we really want to have this outdoor-indoor connection between kind of this lounge space that we have that wants to have a very vibrant edge and something that's lively on the sidewalk and that brings nice public vibrancy. And then another small space in the back that's kind of overflow for fitness or for the play area, the indoor play area, so that can really be lively as well, or you could just do stretching or games. And here's a quick view of the pea patch area and a small seating node. So character images of what those spaces could be. This is the pea patch in phase one, the dog area in phase one, that amphitheater seating that we have in phase one with that kind of synthetic lawn in the back and gathering area. And this is another project, but really thinking about the outdoor and indoor connection between spaces and how they relate to each other. And this is really what we want to create. Trash enclosures, they're all indoor. So the collection is all indoor, and then, like Mike said, it's brought to the corner. Here's one we have in phase one. And this is kind of a preliminary SketchUp view of what we're thinking of. The actual enclosure would be, the compactors would be back here, but it's just that preliminary. Mail kiosk locations are at the secondary entrances, so they need to be close to a parking lot for USPS convenience as well as residents. A couple of mail kiosks that we've done in the previous phases, so that's, we're looking at kind of the design language that you just saw on the trash enclosure to repeat itself as a pattern that we're gonna happen. So, and then the bike barn, A nice thing that this is the character for the inside of the bike barn, so really the bikes would be attached to the walls, secured completely for residents. We would have a fixed station and a bike pump outside of the bike barn, and that would be on the trail, so that's completely available to anybody that needs a little bit of hair or a fix. So that's definitely a nice amenity for the community as a whole, and that's a quick shot or a SketchUp view of what we're looking at for design of that. And planting palette, kind of mostly deciduous trees. We do have some evergreen accents, but we want to use trees in an architectural way. And a lot of evergreen with accents of deciduous with flowers and evergreen ground covers. We do have the rain gardens, and that's where we expect to have maybe a little more grasses or things that have dynamic effects. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
First of all, great photos.
Thanks.
I always love the visuals. They really help a lot. And
Should I stay here or? I don't know.
we're going to have some questions, so I think maybe, you could stay there, and Mike, you may have to pop up again, I guess. Or Dan, if we hit him up with some brutal questions. So before I ask anything, I guess I'll just open it up to the commission. I would like to have a small discussion here, ask questions, and then have, if there's anybody from the public that'd like to speak, then we'll have more time to talk. So I'll go ahead and ask. Carl, do you have something?
This might be to Lucy, too. I was curious about the bike barn and its location. It sort of looks to me like you put it in a two-dimensional world, like it's close to the trail, but as someone who uses that, it'd be a lot easier or I use that trail a lot. I'd find it more convenient if it were closer to 8th Avenue, because the last thing I'm going to do is get my bike out of the bike barn and then go down the steps. I'm going to get on a bike and roll out to 8th and on Discovery and go down and around. So if it were farther on the west side, it seems to me it'd be a better location, but that's just my view. I'm curious if you have any feedback.
Ride my bike, yeah. Well,
I think
there's
anybody that rides a bike would agree with that.
Yeah, I might agree with that, but there's also a bike rail going down, and it depends on how long that staircase is to get on the trail,
So,
because that's providing a direct route that way.
can I add one thing, Carl? Where they're showing the bike barn is above the staircase. So if you wanted to take your bike to 8th, all you would do is continue on the
This is
neighborhood
straight.
trail right here, directly out. It wouldn't require going up or down
Yeah.
any stairs.
So either the trail to the east that they're adding or the trail to the west to 8th Avenue are all flat.
Okay, as long as it's easy to get out so that you're not
It's
cutting through too much traffic was all I was concerned about. Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
And I don't have anything, I've got other questions, not the bike barn. The parking, I don't think I heard staff or you really address the 337. I guess it showed 340 in there, but it's 337 on Mike's report versus 375 of why the reduction, because I can guess where we think the reduction is going to be, the slack is going to be taken up, and I'm not sure
Well, and
how are we going to talk about that?
Yeah, before they answer that, I will add, that's certainly one of my big things. I noticed that it's 337, including 35 street parking spots, which, by my recollection, and we've had this discussion before, that those spots are already taken up by Swedish, and with the new Swedish property, you'll know that I actually noted that same concern, that we're also counting it for the new Swedish property, and I don't see how that's going to work.
So I can comment a little bit on that. So code allows them to credit up to 25% of the on-street parking toward their project. So they're entitled to that. Sorry. So code allows them to credit up to 25% of their on-street parking toward their required parking allotment. With 35 stalls, give or take, they're well under that number. I mean, they're around 10%. So there's that. They also provided a a parking study, which I'll let you guys talk about a little bit, but they basically looked at some other comparable communities, and we accepted that, and then we asked them to provide more information about phases 1 and 2 and how those were functioning. They did studies on several different days to to look at the demand and look at and see if the impact was affecting outside, or if there was an impact outside of the project. And I'll defer to you to talk a little bit about that study if you'd like.
So we have our traffic engineer or traffic report person, Mike. But we are, just I guess for the record, we are using the same ratios as what we were proposing, or as what we were allowed to provide for phase 1. So that's 1.25 stalls for every 1.25 for every 1 bed, and then 2 beds plus 1.75. So that's the ratios we're using in this case.
Good evening. My name is Mike Reed, and I'm with Transportation Engineering Northwest. As was noted, we provided a parking analysis, parking demand analysis of the proposed project. We looked at a number of sources initially, one being published rates, national published rates of parking demand studies by...
So Mike, let me just interrupt, because they are not a technical review body.
Okay, sure.
So probably you're just providing them a summary and predominantly related to how phases 1 and 2 are functioning.
Sure, I could focus on that.
Okay,
Okay.
thanks. Sorry, we didn't clarify that.
That's okay. So, as noted, yes, we did go out and survey the existing properties there. We collected data on 3 different weeknights, as well as we did a weekday survey during the day to get a difference of daytime and then peak evening hours. When we did our evening counts, we did our counts after 8 o'clock at night to try to capture when everyone would typically be back home. We also, although not looked in here, we also did a weekend count later on. The results of those surveys indicated that the overall demand for the site was still less than the parking that was provided. The approximate ratio, just to kind of give you rough orders of what's being provided, is about 1.6 stalls per dwelling unit. That's the proposed supply. And the peak or average peak demand that was observed in the evenings, weekday evenings, was less than 1.4. It was about 1.37 on average.
I'm sorry, I wanted to clarify what you just said. The parking provided in the existing phase 1 and 2 is 1.6 per, I'm sorry, would you say that one more?
It's the one that's the parking supply that's being proposed as part of the project before you, on average, over the whole project, is about 1.61 stalls per dwelling unit.
Where was the study done at? I mean,
Pardon?
where was the study done at?
We did the study at the existing
Phase 1 and 2
phase
across
2.
the
Yeah.
road.
We didn't look at the whole project, of course, because it wasn't yet fully occupied. We just looked at those occupied homes.
Yeah, do you know what the percentage of occupancy is at the time of the study?
Yeah, it's 96%. So it's nearly fully occupied. And when we took a look at those, when we did the surveys, we did we adjusted 2 different ways, two additional factors to kind of account for. One was occupancy. So even though the site was fully occupied, we factored up to assume that it was fully occupied, just to see if we did have enough spaces. In addition, we did not count garage units. So we did not go in to physically count whether or not each garage that's provided had occupied stalls. We assumed that they were all full as a conservative measure. So there's some fudge factors in there that we're comfortable with in the observations that we took. It was fairly consistent observations when we conducted these, and they're consistent with the other national and other local surveys that we've done.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. I guess I'll say that I think we're comparing apples to oranges. Every one of those spots on that road on 8th is covered, is used, it seems, every single day already. So I have a fundamental problem with, code aside, okay, so we can talk about that in a minute, the fundamental problem with saying we can count something that's already being utilized because it's impractical to think that they'll be utilized
And that's
any
not
differently.
even with Swedish.
Right, and so the difference between with phase 1 and 2, as opposed to what we're talking about here, is you've got not only the current Swedish property and Port Alliance, but you've also got the new Swedish property coming into play, which we're also counting those same spots as far as I'm,
No.
well, I think you're counting one side of the street, if I remember,
Right.
which to the average driver is irrelevant. And they'll park wherever the spot is. And we're not factoring in all of these new residents. So I don't think it's, personally don't think it's the same type of measurement because you're comparing apples to oranges. Now, whether or not 1.6 or 1, that's probably a good discussion to have if the requirement is too high. But it seems that the requirement that we have already at 375, we're taking 35 street parking spots that don't exist. You know, to me, it just doesn't make sense. Thoughts?
I concur with that. It seems like we're coloring it, you know, a different color, but in the end, it just seems like it's going to be very tight parking.
I mean,
Yeah,
to
I
me-
think the other factor too that's completely different here is the great design feature of having the on-street access will drive parking to those very limited spots. So to count on those when people will want to park there, I don't think it's going to happen because, like you said, they're already full.
Yeah, phase 1 and 2 mostly. Phase 1 is mostly interior parking. Phase 2, you've got some parking directly outside, but you also have a large amount of parking behind the units, which make with easy access to those units, if I remember correctly, including garages.
Well, technically, we were creating 2 streets in phase 1, so a lot of the stalls in phase 1 are technically parallel stalls that are on street.
My guess, I appreciate that. My guess is that once the other property gets built across the street from phase 1,
I understand.
we'll be counting those. I mean, I remember having this discussion about that too, because all that interior alley parking and so, well, no alley parking, alley access, all of those people who are not parking in the alleys or the garages are going to be parking on the street. And I think your numbers would be very different when that comes along. So because a lot of those street parking spots would be taken up.
We do have the parking garage, the interior parking garage that's covered in the whole of Building A is 86 stalls, and that's really attractive just generally for people to have a covered spot.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to have one if I lived there. So I think those will get good use.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we're counting the parallel stalls on 8th Avenue, and we're counting 5 that we're creating along here, which don't exist.
I guess my biggest concern is 8th Avenue because they're already being used. There's no
But they're being
excess
used, but at
capacity.
the same time, the parking lot that's kind of west of here is half empty, right?
Yeah, that's true.
I would agree that from what I understand, the people that park there are employees of the hospital, and if the hospital were to redirect them, then that's a possibility that you would alleviate that.
Well, the on-street parking is used right now by people who don't park in the parking that was designed for them. And because it's right-of-way and there are not time limits on right-of-way, they're not pushed away. I think that the people who will be living here will come home at night when the on-street parking is probably more available. I think they're unlikely to choose on-street parking first, but more likely that's going to be guests and visitors who are going to be more likely to be there at night and on the weekends. But even if it is residents are more likely to be there at night and on the weekends, and that's not when it's typically used. Another thing that's different about this project, I think that's favorable relative to their parking, is that phases 1 and 2 rely a lot more on those small, or not small, single-car garages, which don't allow any flexibility in use. You know, you've either rented it or not rented it. As I understand it, there's 20 of those in phase 1 that are not rented right now. In this particular project, there's a very limited number of those single-car garages, which improves the ability for people to share and actually use all the parking that's available.
Sorry.
And all I was going to say was, we're not surprised that you're commenting on this. It's helpful to hear what your concerns are, and I think, what we have to do is take that back and look at your questions and try and give you a response.
Well, just to wrap my point up there is, I think, I guess my issue is, A, dropping the requirement by 10% and counting another 10% by including on-street parking that I think is already being utilized to a great degree. That's my issue. If it was one or the other, I might be a little less inclined to be concerned. But the fact that we're doing both, it seems to me that we're creating a problem where we don't need to.
And when you mentioned the garages, and I wasn't clear how Mr. Reed, right?
Correct.
Calculated the garage counts. I think you said that you assumed that they were all full.
We assumed that they were all full.
And so if you counted, let's just pretend 100 cars, 20 of those could have been in garages, or 100 that you saw, and then there were maybe more that were in garages that you didn't add to that 100?
No, when we did our observations, all we were able to count and wanted to, just for security and privacy concerns, we just counted empty stalls within the private areas of the development. And then we assumed that there was no empty garages, essentially, and counted those as full. Then we also counted the existing street frontages over there adjacent to the properties at night, and said, now that all the contractors are gone, which do take up parking out of the day, this is also additional demand that it may not be parked on site, but it's additional demand being generated by the project. And we added that count in addition to those, in addition to the demand we saw observed on site. So it was a fairly conservative analysis in how we observed.
As long as we were conservative on the garages, I didn't want to be.
Right.
Correct,
So
correct.
I think
Because-
that's the important thing, is they did the conservative approach,
Because
assuming they
most of
were
them
all
are
full.
full of cars.
Which is great, but
Yeah.
I think the part that's missing on that is we weren't, it sounds like you didn't take into account fully built out property across the street, across Discovery, and.
No, you're right. A
And-
portion of phase 2 was not done at that
Right.
time.
Well, not just phase 2, but also, I'm spacing on
Blocks 21 and 22,
the brownstones,
Brownstone.
right? Which is going to have all alleys and garages, and a lot of people are not going to park in those alleys because they're going to have extra vehicles, or they're going to have guests who can't park in the garages and will only be able to park on street. So that's, again, I feel like we're double counting stuff, and even though code allows it, I just think practicality doesn't support it.
I just had a quick question too. You mentioned about renting the garage spaces and that those weren't fully rented for phase 1 and 2. So the spaces below ground, the covered spaces, are those going to be rented spaces also in buildings A and E or F? Will those be
There's
rented?
none in F, but yes, in A, they will be rented, and then they'll be rented in B through E. Yeah. But A doesn't have any underground parking.
Okay.
It's a slab on grade.
Thank
So you said, how many underground spots are in Building A?
82?
86, and those are not rented?
They're all rented.
They're all rented, so it's possible that some of them will go unrented and people will choose to park on the street, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
Just to add real briefly about the shared parking, because I think you're right. I don't want people to get confused between what code or what supply is and what actual demand is. And you did a great job about talking about the shared potential, which was one of our survey data collection points at the existing project across the street. So midday, it was after lunch, 1:30, when we did that count, and the parking demand at that time was just less than 1 per unit, using the same methodology. So during the daytime, there's a 30% lower demand, roughly, of apartment units. So the opportunity for shared demand during that time of a street space is increased dramatically. If a parking generation rate or parking generation demand by the apartment unit is generated. So I think that potential shared is an opportunity. And to be honest, you know, the peak demand that we found versus the supply that's provided over there, we wouldn't need to count the on-street parking as necessary supply to meet the demands of the project. So I just thought I'd add that.
Yes, Michael.
Hey, Mike, do you guys have any sort of data or information about how parking patterns change as a building and tenants mature? So 10 years from now, when this is a more established apartment as opposed to a brand new project that you guys did, do the parking patterns change significantly as families and demographics change?
They don't change significantly. I will say that the parking demand ratios that we saw were slightly higher than some of the other local surveys that we've done, as well as the national standards. So we referred to those and documented those rates, but I don't have any trend analysis of over time if that diminishes at all.
Perfect, thank you. And then just a comment, I do think the fact that 86 of the stalls will be rented would drastically or potentially drastically alter the results of how people will choose to park. Mm-hmm. I know if I were to rent an apartment, then I'd probably try and find free parking first if I didn't have a car that I loved. So.
Well, and it's an excellent point about families, because I can tell you both in my situation, and I'll speak for Carl too, we live on the same street. Since the time we moved into our homes, you know, there were two of us that were driving, had 2 cars. I have 3 kids that are all of driving age now. They don't all have 3 cars. We didn't have 3 additional cars at all times, but at times we had 1, 2, or 3 additional cars. And so it absolutely changed the demand on our street. And then you had Carl's kids. He has 2 of driving age, and there were several others on the street. So our demand went from high to really high, and it didn't ever go to low.
And those are single-family properties?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that there's a different dynamic that goes with those types of properties where you have home ownership and longevity of a resident.
Yeah, I understand that, but there are families too who have children of driving age, or they bring a mother-in-law to live, or whatever, and there are additional vehicles. So it's just an interesting point to bring up. I don't know if it drastically changes it, but it's certainly something to consider.
Now we're kicking them out, we're getting spaces back.
Yeah. But the other kids are growing up on the neighborhood, so. Yes, Nina.
Just want to support the conversation, and balancing it, I want to say how excited I was to see structured parking underneath the building. Oh, that's great. I'm really happy about that, to hear that it will have a fee, although that's understandable. The concerns that the members of the commission have brought up, I think, would be well heard. It seems like we're so close, and I'd love to close this gap. I think Issaquah Highlands, when we've looked at applications before, even with our fairly aggressive, we don't want too many cars kind of parking standards in Issaquah Highlands, there still doesn't seem to be quite enough room. And when we talk about where DevCo is on phase 1 and 2, I do anecdotally see a lot of people coming out of the apartments to the parking places across the street, especially where the brownstones are going to be. There's not going to be any parking there for them. So I share all of your concern with the parking deficiency to the standard. And I wondered about Proliance, for instance. I'm just fishing here, just an example of a business hours type building. Is there a property like that might provide the solution for a residential community? I'm not picking on Proliance. I'm not saying it should be Proliance Swedish or the place to the north of Discovery Drive. I'm just wondering where the solution might be. And then I do want to say, though, as far as the demographics that Michael brought up, I lived in Shorewood on Mercer Island for a long time. Really loved it. And I remember when I lived there, there were only 200 kids in the community, but several years back there were 600 kids in the community. So these quality apartment communities do encourage people to stay and live their lives and raise their kids and then stay. So I think that that might be an interesting thing, whether it helps us or not. It would be nice if it would. That's it.
Thanks, Anna. And I really appreciate that you bring up, what are the potential solutions, because I don't want to just keep talking about the problem, but parking in the Highlands is a problem. We're going to have a massive problem with the commercial space that was already built. The Regency Centers, we already see it full, and most of the stores haven't opened up yet. So, and there will be overflow into those neighborhoods, particularly on the phase 1 and 2 side. I suspect the same thing will happen when the Swedish property is built out and this is built out and so forth, and we're going to create a much higher demand than there is supply, and I just don't want to be short-sighted. So I'd love to understand what the potential solutions are. Instead of us fighting about, you don't have enough, yes, we think we have enough, what are the solutions to maybe get to a middle ground that will satisfy us who have lived there, who have ridden our bikes there, who have walked there. I walk past Discovery, the first 2 phases, almost every day. And I see what goes on. I see the patterns. I see when the construction people leave in the afternoon, and then people come home, and those spots are immediately filled up. And the brownstones, I'll say it again, I don't want to forget that those are going in there because I have a massive issue with the parking situation there already. And to say that we're going to share it, and then share it with Swedish, and share and share and share, there's just not enough to share. So, anyway, yes, Jim.
A couple of things. Mike, you mentioned, and I'm glad you did, that even if you don't count the 8th Avenue shared parking, it still meets the requirements for the traffic study.
Well, the supply that would be provided on site would still accommodate the demand.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Maybe I didn't say it very well. Could I just get a little bit more on your background? Is this what you do for a living?
Sure, I can respond to that. I've, 25-year career as a transportation engineer in the region. I started out at the city of Redmond working and have been a private consultant for, 23 plus years. I am working on probably 20 similar projects to this particular one right now as we speak, so in various stages. Okay. And so we do this quite often, and we, in knowing about parking for these types of projects, we've done a number of parking studies for this project as well, and type of property, as well as just a whole host of different land uses.
Okay, just for clarification, I'm not doubting your expertise on this. I just think it's important to know. And then what would help me would be to get an understanding of, I guess, the philosophy behind asking for fewer than the number of stalls that code requires. Was it something where, you did a traffic study at the very beginning of this and said, okay, well, according to Mike's results, we only need this many stalls, so we're going to design around that? Was it we designed it as such and it only produced this many stalls, or was it I'm not asking Mike. Yeah, but or was it the fact that you said, well, we can rent some stalls and come up with a little bit additional income? I just think it would help.
What was behind the decision?
Yeah.
Well, I'll speak briefly about that. So for this particular developer, I've been working for them for close to 20 years now in doing work throughout the state. They have their parking, nailed down, so to speak. They know what their parking ratios are, and so, not to put words in their mouth, they have a pretty good idea of what they need, just purely from supply to meet their expected market.
Yeah, I am Tom Neubauer with DevCo. Agreed with as Mike said. I mean, we have over 3,000 units in mainly in Snohomish and King County, some outside, where we do have, studies are basically tenant and tenant satisfaction, and whether we have a problem or we don't have a problem. We understand that we want people to live in our units, so we need to provide the parking for the units. We have no desire to take additional land and just pave it. just in case, so we want to be very careful that we have enough parking for our tenants. We are very clear about the different demands and hours and shared parking, within our units, when the availability is, when the availability is not. And a lot of this with like a mixed use project up on phase 2, which we have some retail, where we have some additional parking which will be used during the day, and then for the tenants that come home at night. So we certainly made a decision based on all the information that we've had that's saying this is the parking that's needed. The total units is an important part of what makes this project function as to make sense for us business wise. So it's not that the business side isn't involved as well, but the business side is critical to us for the part that we know if we don't have enough parking, people won't live there. There are part of the reason on phase 1 why there are available garages is, yes, we do charge for the garages, and as long as there's available parking, people don't really, they feel, would I rather have a free spot 500 feet away or pay the $75 to $80 a month that it'll take to park. Probably no one would pay for parking if we had 3 stalls per unit and all the available parking right in front of your unit. So I guess hopefully that kind of describes. We can also help manage what we do on our site. We know that we provide parking. If there is a problem, we can limit how many cars you're allowed to bring on our site. So we haven't necessarily needed to get there ever, but I mean we can manage our own supply and with the demand.
Thank you, Tom. Welcome back, too.
Well, thank you.
Let me back up a second. First of all, I want to say I think this is a really great presentation, and what you guys are doing is really cool. And I love what you guys have already done with the Devco property before, and I think you've done a nice job of being a great partner. And I know that you've been here several times, and I think it's working great in the Highlands. So I don't want people to think I don't think that. I guess the other thing I want to ask, how many, and maybe you answered this and I wasn't clear, but how many total spots of the 337 or 340, whatever the number is, are paid parking spots? Is it just the 86 or is it something else?
86 plus 24.
The
Okay.
garages that are in the carriage units under B, C, D, and E.
Okay, so
We get
110.
6 per, so it's 24.
So 30% are paid. In your experience with Devco Phase 1 and 2 or other properties, what percentage of paid spots are typically left vacant or not paid for? Is there a standard kind of an average that you see?
Bill, do you know the average? You can do it.
I'm determined to get everyone up
Phil
at least
runs
once.
Phil runs our property management company for
Okay,
this
thanks.
as a partner. I'll let him go.
Sure. Phil Norred, also on the Devco team, and I'm kind of the operations guy. So it's my team up at Discovery Heights that is, leasing the apartments, doing the maintenance, and so I can speak to the parking there and to that particular question. We do have garages up at Discovery Phase 1 and Phase 2. Tom's right. I think we've said throughout here we've never fully occupied all of those garages, and the demand has been such. There has been enough parking on the area outside where the garage parking hasn't necessarily appealed to everyone that's out there. Our market rate on the garage parking in Phase 1 and Phase 2 is currently $150 for a garage, competitive in the market. There will be a charge in this building A, and I haven't quite determined that. I would say in Phase 1 there's been quite a demand and quite a few requests for carports, which we chose not to do. But I think people like the concept of covered parking, and I think they would pay for it, and I think it will be in great demand in this particular development. So somewhat market-driven. We don't want to have parking problems. That creates issues. have we ever had an issue where people have said, hey, the parking's tight, I couldn't park when we came home? They've made that claim. If you look at where our garages are available in Phase 1, they're mostly in the carriage homes that face Highlands Drive. So it's away from where a lot of the actual apartments are. So people have not chosen to rent down in those garages and then walk up to their home. The difference with Discovery West is you essentially have two big buildings where all the parking is right there. So it's kind of fundamentally a little bit different. I'm also a resident of Issaquah, and I've been up to the Ram and I've been up to Dick's and so forth, and I can appreciate some of the comments about the parking right now because I think a lot of Puget Sound is coming up to visit Issaquah Highlands with all the new growth. And I used to come and park right in front along the street at SIP Restaurant. I was there last night, and I ended up parking in some, secondary residential street because I couldn't find anything even in the Regal Cinemas parking lot.
And now you're proving my point here.
Right. Well, I'm saying that is a function of everything being brand new, and I think if you look at that, maybe a few months from now, you're going to see some fall off from
I
that.
appreciate that, but I don't agree with it. The way we've seen the Highlands grow, and I've lived here since 1998, I know you've all heard that before, it's never slowed down. It's only grown. And by the way, thanks for all that, but I still don't have the answer. What percentage of your paid parking spots are left? No, I have a feeling. Yeah, I have a feeling they know, though.
But I think what you're trying to identify is the information you need for us to provide you in the response.
No, I think what I need is information to see if I'm, out of turn or not. I mean, I want to understand if it's 5%, then maybe it's not a big deal because people are willing to pay for the spots. You say that it's $150 is market rate. I think that's interesting, and it's probably, I'm sure it's true. I'm not in that business, but I don't know anywhere else in the Highlands we have to pay for parking. So I'm curious. Then maybe there are some units that you have to pay for parking. I don't know, but I've never heard it. And so when I say market rate, that may be market rate for parking in a unit in King County or something. I don't know, but I haven't heard of anybody paying in the Highlands. And when there's free parking, I don't know. I'm still just struggling with this. I know we have a lot of other stuff to cover, but if you know the answer to that, I'd love to hear it.
It's 92 garages in Phase 1. I think I have 13 vacancies today. I think I have 52 garages in Phase 2, and I have 9 vacancies.
Sorry? Yeah. Okay. So
I mean, Phase 2 is 50%, is what we're saying. 50% is paid parking. Phase 2 is you have how many garages? You have 25. No, you have 30.
Just repeat the numbers and.
What are your numbers again?
Maybe you confused me, but I was going
you
with
said 9 are
52.
vacant from 52, right?
I have 92 garages in Phase 1. I have 13 vacancies.
Okay, so 10%, roughly, a little more.
Well,
Right.
91 of 200. There's 253 units.
I'm saying of paid, so I'm just trying to figure out if you have 110 paid units and we're expecting 10 to 20% not being sold, that's 20 spots that are going to be taken up elsewhere. That's all I'm trying to figure out.
But I guess our point is that the reason why they are available is because people are finding parking somewhere else. And you're right, and people will. But our point would be, we would be insane to charge highway robbery. If people are coming here and they cannot find spots on 8, they're going to come to us and we're not going to say, well, hey, if we're not, it doesn't make sense for us to charge a price that has too much more than the 10% in what you're doing. But at the same part, we've noticed in other properties, if parking gets, the tighter parking gets, the more people are willing, and that vacancy rate goes down. So, again, we are comfortable, we would consider any additional parking, any overflow parking. The first people that have come, there are ample spots for the first people to come. Some may choose to pay additional to have it covered and enclosed and private. There are entrances on the east side of all the buildings too. So people will, the easier access is below Building A, where you'll take an elevator straight up. Or if you're on the east side of Building F, there's an entrance there and you'll go right into the elevator court and go up. There may be some other places that visitors come in, but we can look at too. But if you look at nighttime along 8th Avenue, after 6 p.m., there are no cars.
So in the interest of moving forward, and I'll stop beating this horse, but I don't consider it a dead horse yet, what are the potential solutions? I mean, not going to ask you to reduce your building size and reduce your number of units, but would there be a consideration to say, hey, maybe we'll reduce the number of paid parking spots and offer more unpaid so that we don't encourage people to park on already shared parking spots? I don't know if that's I'm just throwing out, is that something you guys would consider? Is that a potential option?
So Jeff, we need to go away and talk about all the stuff that you've.
So I'm not looking
you're
for an answer on that right now. I'm
Really?
throwing out, well, I'm not necessarily. I'm just throwing out options. So
Okay.
Anyway, anything else, Michael?
Jeff, that makes me think about, and hopefully Nina will bring up a question about our sustainability efforts and our affordable housing. If we have 30% of our parking garages that are driven to add a few $1,000s a year to parking, and we're driving people to park on the street or pay for the parking, it seems that's a little incongruent with sustainability measures for urban village economically.
In terms of affordability of housing?
Yes.
Okay.
That's a good point. Scott, do you have something? Different topic, that's fine. Let's move on. All right. Yeah, Scott, go ahead. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Appreciate you fielding our questions. Obviously, this is somewhat of a concern in regards to parking ongoing within the Highlands, as Jeff and several folks have reiterated. So I do want to say very much also appreciate the visuals as well as the green space that's been factored into the development, the proposed development here. So continuing on the topic of vehicles, parking, and transportation, if you will, I have a question specific to, where did it go? It was in regards to, I believe it's number 14, yes. Condition number 14, two-way vehicular routes where cars will not be backing out will not exceed 20 feet in width. Can we get a visual in regards to what we're speaking to there?
So I think it's all these parking roads. So, right. So first thing to say is that this access road is presently 18 feet, but we've been asked to widen it to 20 feet. So this one is 20 feet.
Does that include the parking?
The parallel parking is 7 feet wide, so it's 20
But that's
feet
not part
plus
of the
7.
20 feet?
No.
Okay.
No. And then the drive aisle are really what you can see between the planted islands, right? So the drive aisle here and here is 18 feet, but when you have parallel stalls, you need to have 24 feet or 22 feet if it's compact stalls to back up. So we neck it down at the planting island, so there's a perceived 18 feet in width, kind of as you look through the parking islands, and so that this width is perceived as 18 feet, but as the parking bays expand, there's actually behind each stall, there's 24 feet or 22 feet, depending on if those are compacts or.
And just
so those meet standards from the city.
Okay, so 20 foot.
I would just add that
18.
the 20 feet where cars are not backing out is just the drive aisle, like for example in the parking lot. That's the standard that's used throughout Issaquah Highlands. You can find it throughout Regency, pretty much throughout the entire project.
That is exactly my next question, so thank you for that.
Okay.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yeah, I have a few. My first question is related to number 2, condition 2. I'm curious where that applies to, about the city purchasing an area outside of any site element.
So, actually, I'm going to jump up to the lectern.
I actually have a slide that shows.
Oh, okay, great.
I didn't put the end.
Well, you know what? This slide shows it. Oh.
Sorry. It's coming.
It's the dog.
It's after the dog. That's my just in case slide. To me? Okay. So in blue is the zone that we'd be looking at for active use or use for trails. So the dog park, the trail and its new planted edges, the stair. Sorry. the stair connection, and then the whole trail that connects, and then a portion of the community gardens are in that zone as well. And then the conditions actually state that the applicant would need to, we would need to revegetate the whole slope up to the trail,
Okay.
which we would
That's
do.
part of it, but I think with that,
Yeah.
So I just wanted the visual,
Oh.
but you can explain what
Okay.
the rest is.
so.
Doesn't answer the question.
So the condition just talks about, right now, they're showing some elements that aren't on their property, they're on the city's property. Specifically, those elements, well, the red line delineates the property boundary.
Mike,
Speak to the mic.
you need to get
Microphone.
closer.
Sorry. I thought I
Mike,
talked
Mike,
loud
Mike.
enough. So again, the red line delineates the property boundary. The stuff shown in blue is currently on the city's property. We've started preliminary discussions, and the administration is supportive of likely selling that portion of property to the applicant so that they can get the dog park and potentially a portion of their trail and part of the pea patch on their property. And that's what that condition's getting at.
And I would just add that, part of that is also, when we reviewed Phase 1, there was a lot of interest on the commission in terms of how things appear and how that edge is treated. And so instead of making a bright line when we got up against a piece of city property that is just a slope and is not used, if there was an ability to regrade and have things that come up to the edge or even spill into the city property, that we thought that would make a better transition between the project and the trails and the slopes.
Were you done
Can I
with
go
that?
for a second, Michael? And then
Go
I'm
ahead.
going to give it back to Michael. Mike, this might be for you as well while we're on this drawing. In regards to condition 40, and losing which other one talked about the walls, because, yeah, 20 talked about the spar walls, which are the existing walls, and then 40 is talking about retaining walls to the east side, because I was curious about this slope, which would be to the above the blue or to the east. Is it headed to the first trail and then the additional until it goes down to the other portion of the trail? I just don't understand which is going to be vegetation. Is there any amount of reinforcement that has to go on? Are we building new walls? Can you elaborate on those areas for me?
Sure. As part of this, in order to hold up part of the
Hey,
trail.
Mike, get close to the
Sorry,
microphone.
I'm sorry. As part of this, well, let me pull up the slide on the plan drawing that shows where these additional retaining walls, they're short walls, but I can show you where they're at. I was going to show the plan drawings, but if you know exactly where they are, I know that there's one right here. Is that right, Marique?
Yeah. We
So
have-
it kind of holds up the dog park there. These are going to be short walls. They slope, they start at about 1 foot and they max out at 6 feet. So they kind of roll with the grade. And those are the walls that we're talking about. The design character of those needs to be consistent with traditional townscape, which prohibits rockeries. And did you have a second condition that you were concerned about?
No, it was those two in combination because they
Okay.
just said walls and spar walls, and it was unclear what was where, so you might want to clarify that, Lucy, and
I will
the
make
changes.
those a little bit more clear with the briefing response.
Super, thanks, Mike. Back to Mr. Beard.
Hold on,
Oh,
9 is
okay.
still on that one, I think.
The condition number 20, I think it was, not just with aesthetics, but with the load. And I wanted to maybe in the next meeting, first I want to express my support for asking the questions about this interface, not only because of the elevation, the grade, the walls, but the relationship with city-owned property and issues of maintenance and when we're talking about managing the load, their relationship with the responsibility to the city. So like to have a little more information. I think we're running out of time tonight, but that was an area of concern for me.
So I'm sorry, just to make sure I'm understanding your question, Nina, you're talking about maintenance of these various pieces?
Well, if this,
Number 20 is saying that there should be this report that's submitted that either shows that no additional loads are imposed on the walls or that the additional loading has been mitigated. So on the surface, this is showing that this is being attended to and there's a condition for it. So I'm saying, great. But I just wanted to make sure that we paid enough attention to it because it does involve a relationship between the private property and the city property next to it and the responsibilities. And I'm remembering back to the Lakeside Development Agreement where these interfaces are and whose responsibility is it when something fails and the vulnerability of those places and so on.
Thanks, Nina. Eric, sorry.
I just wanted to see if you could touch on your opening of the presentation. You talked about sustainability commitment, and can you just elaborate on that a little bit?
Yes. Well, we're going to be a built green 4-star multifamily project, and then I think a lot of the materials that we're selecting are, so I mean, thinking about LEED and sustainability, we're doing a very dense project. We're going to select products that are, you know, appropriate and have local attributes. On the landscape side, you know, we're going to plant natives or adaptive plantings. We're going to have drip irrigation, which reduces water needs. Yeah, that's right. We're doing synthetic fields, so there's no actual grass. Trying to think about rain gardens. It's all in there. The bike barns. I mean, it's kind of this all multimodal, everything's here project, so you don't need to go anywhere except for work.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Scott, did you have something? Or Michael? Sorry, you still have a list there, right? Go for it.
Number 12, Mike, I got a question for you down here. The auto court will be designed in a single plane, avoiding the use of curbs to emphasize the holistic nature of the space. In some of the drawings, it appears that there are curbs in the auto court. Can you clarify that a little bit for me?
So in the drawings, I think it might have been that curbs were shown, and again, these aren't the construction drawings we're reviewing against. Those are provided as an attachment at the back of the staff report.
Okay.
So we've added this condition to make sure that, because there's going to be a relationship, and we can kind of see it here, especially with a lot of the internal community facilities, the pool, the workout area, the children's care, is going to be, sorry, my mouse is jumping around, in this part of Building F. It's likely that a lot of tenants are going to exit Building A from this door and just make this short little jaunt right here. Now, we recognize that they're providing some parking here, so the condition talks about making this a space that's on a flat plane that has a lot of design elements that'll make it suitable for pedestrians. You know, we also have the east-west pedestrian trail that goes right by there. So really, we're just getting at making sure that that's designed with thought and interest to how the pedestrians are going to interact with cars in that space.
Will there be any way to prevent cars from interacting with pedestrians in those spaces?
So yeah, there's going to have to be, and you know, what that's going to be at this point, we haven't discussed yet, and that would get worked out during the utility permit, but certainly we'll have to find a way to keep cars from going up onto the trail.
Yeah, I've lived in an apartment building there 2 people drove into before, so just a little sensitive to that. It was awesome.
You need fewer enemies.
Yeah, and then one more point. I just want to say I think the bike barn is the first time I've ever actually seen bicycle parking addressed appropriately in a development. If someone is realistically going to commute with a bicycle, it's going to be something that probably has some value to it. Mm-hmm. So they're going to store it in their house or not lock it up on a pole outside the building. So I've never seen anything in one of these projects that is as awesome as that. My wife's work has one of those, and it's utilized, and I think this location may not be 100% perfect, but it's a good solution, and I really like the design. So that's pretty incredible.
And just to give some credit to Devco, what you saw during the SDP for Phase 1 was pads all around the site. And that's like some of the things that sometimes evolve behind the scenes. And when we went out to do the final inspection, it was like, there are all these pads, but there are no bike racks. So what happened? Well, they built a bike room. They converted one of their storage spaces into a bike room because they were getting so much demand for bicycle storage that it evolved to respond to what the tenants were actually asking for.
Yeah, I think it's great. And then I do have one question on Discovery Drive. Will there be direct street access from the units that face Discovery Drive?
No.
No? Okay. Okay. And
Can you explain
And
why?
The reason is really.
like on
grade
8th
change.
Avenue, you can walk out your front door on 8th Avenue.
The reason is grade change. So we've got an 8 to 10 foot grade change between level 1, which is, so this plan shows 2 levels, right? So you've got the garage on, let's say, level 0, and then this is level 1, which is plus 10 feet. So this is all kind of at grade here, but the street starts to drop down, and we're at about -4 or 4.5 feet right at the corner, and then we're right about at -10 feet. Okay. So that's where we are. And so the units here, we really have about 5 or 6 feet of planting depth here, and it's really kind of tight to fit a stoop and stairs, and it becomes less and less practical.
And sorry, one more thing. Mike, in 43 at the bottom, it says no uplighting is allowed.
Yes.
And I know the last project we just discussed, we were allowing uplighting for landscaping.
What project was that?
Swedish.
The Swedish. It is different, but you said this is standard, so I'll never need to reference it again.
Good catch.
But I know we did allow the use of uplighting for landscape.
So he won't know what you're talking about because he hasn't really worked that much on Swedish. So I'm going to just try and do a little translation. The tools that are in their more recent development agreements have more options.
Mm-hmm.
So it was not so much lighting for landscape, it was more lighting for pedestrian areas. But we don't have the same lighting standards and tools. So all we have is no uplighting for Issaquah Highlands. Now, we can certainly talk to them about whether we could apply the bug rating to this project, but right now that's not a regulatory tool that we have at Issaquah Highlands.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Thanks, Michael. Eric?
Just one real quick question. Can you define more of a carriage unit? Is there any particular distinction for a carriage unit versus a townhouse or whatever?
So the carriage homes are basically, so it's 6 garages, and above those 6 garages, we've got 2 three-bedroom units that are on 2 floors. So the first floor is it bedrooms or is it living? I can't remember. First floor is living, so right above the 3 garages, we got a living, or 2 living units, and then bedrooms on the upper floor. So they're 3-story, but really just 2 units per building.
Okay.
Does that clarify?
Carl, did you have something?
Thanks.
Actually, I had a quick question on that. Are the garages associated with those units, or the garages independent of those units?
Independent.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Actually, Jeff sort of stole my thunder when he was thanking you guys. I know when Devco came in for phase 1 and phase 2, there was a lot of, haven't seen you guys before and talking. And I know we did this when Swedish came in, and we all talked about, we've all been to the emergency room 15 times, and we love Swedish Hospital. I just want to extend the same courtesy to Devco that you guys have been great to work with in the past, because it's been a lot of, wrestling and feel like a pit bull up here sometimes on the parking. Sorry, Lucy. But you guys have been good to work with, so I just wanted to extend that thanks to you guys.
Yeah, thank you. All right, I do have one question about you'd mentioned the pet area. There's a gate at Discovery to get into the pet area. That was an intention, I think.
Yes. Yes.
So there'll be more than one gate, or is that the only one?
2 gates. So we have basically.
Can you get
those-
closer to the microphone?
So it's those pet vestibules, so you have double gates, basically.
Okay.
There's one here and there's one here. And the whole pet area really wants to be kind of fairly leveled throughout that whole space, so.
So accessible through the parking lot, or accessible from the sidewalk
From
at
the
Discovery?
sidewalk.
Oh, okay.
From the sidewalk.
Cool. Thank you. All right, so if there are no other comments right now, I'd like to go ahead and open the floor for public comment. Is there anybody out in the audience that would like to speak tonight? Nobody's jumping up, so at this time, I will go ahead and close the public comment section, and we'll reopen it again at the next meeting. So we saved a little time there. Anything else before we move on, guys? Oh yeah, so Carl pointed out we think this is a site development permit, not a side development permit. So we'll get that cleaned up. We are waiting. We are waiting for the front development permit as well. I do want to say though, obviously, I'm passionate about parking in the neighborhood and so forth. Again, I think that this is a really great property and plan and so forth, and we have a lot more to discuss about it. But I'm saying this from a place of experience, and I'm, the experience that I've had living there and going through the community. And so I'm not just trying to cause problems for problem's sake, but it's a real issue. And we live there, we experience it, and I really want people to think about what the options are, because between the required, which I don't understand what required means if we're not requiring people to follow requirements, and reducing spots and sharing with spots that are already being used, I guess that's the only thing that's really, really bothering me about this thing. And I think we have an opportunity to address it in some ways, and I look forward to hearing what you come back with. So don't take that as me not, being supportive of all the other stuff you guys are doing, because I think there's wonderful stuff built into this plan. Thank you. All right, so anything else on the agenda that we should know about that's not related to this, or anything else?
So I think the only thing is that since there was a lively conversation this evening, we need to go back and look at the schedule relative to the next meeting and whether we can do 2 topics in one meeting or we need to split them up. So that will be, I think, the thing that we need to go away. There will be definitely a meeting on November 5th. Mm-hmm. We just need to let you know what the topics are.
Was your desire to come up with a decision tonight, or no?
No.
Okay. All right. Okay, great. So the next meeting is November 5th. Anything else that we should discuss that you need to let us know?
Not that I think of off the top of my head.
All right. Thanks for the great discussion. Thank you to the applicant and all the supporting cast. Thank you to the city again for everything. Okay. We will go ahead and adjourn this meeting 10 minutes early. Thank you.